My guest is Ophelia Rigault, and author of The Caring Leader.
Yes.
And so I thought it was a really, well, first of all, thanks for coming in today and
Thanks for having me.
telling me about this. So I read the book, and so we identified that a leader is someone who takes charge, someone who says something should be done about this, and someone needs to do it, and they end up doing it, is really what a leader is. It doesn't have to be the leader of industry or someone in politics or something like that. It could be on a much different level. And I started thinking that sometimes you have to be your own leader on your own behalf.
Yes. So when I think of leadership, I really think of, and where I wrote the book, a big part of leadership is self-reflection, finding out why you're doing it.
Okay.
Looking inside and, discovering your own bias, what's holding you back from doing something. If you can't lead yourself and take ownership of yourself and say that I need help or be humble, like if you are the owner of a big company, and if you cannot say, you know what, my staff or even the cleaning woman can give me insights on how to make this company better.
Right.
If you can't do that, you're not a leader.
Right.
So you have to be a leader of your own self first, right? In order to lead people, it's like that saying, they say, put on your own gas mask. When you go, when you're on the airplane and they tell you,
put it on first.
Before you put it on your child.
And then there's the child, if you're traveling with two children, pick the smart one. No, I mean, that's a bad joke.
Yes. So you got to put on your own gas mask, because if we don't put on our own gas masks, we can't help our kids. If you, God forbid, you're on a plane and it's crashing, and if you can't breathe, you can't help those kids.
Right. So you've got to look after yourself first, and then you're in a position to help other people.
Exactly. And it's the same thing with leadership.
Okay.
If you do not look inside, and I tell people, in order to be an inclusive leader, because that's what the whole book is about, being an inclusive leader, and to be an inclusive leader, you want to bring everybody to the table. If you don't look inside and say, you know what, Ophelia, this is your bias. This is what's holding you back. Find a way to remove that. Find a way to say, yeah, this is why I'm stuck. I feel uncomfortable with these groups of people. I don't understand this situation. And how can you be an inclusive leader and lead people because you have blinders on or you're biased? That's not being a leader.
Okay, good. Yeah. And, and I started thinking, too, that they talk about loneliness being as dangerous as smoking for all kinds of reasons. And I started thinking, who's lonely? Well, a lot of times it's seniors. It's people, they've retired from their job. They may have been lost their partner, and now they're living alone. But people are not going to knock on your door. No. That's what you will find out, is that you have to take the initiative to take care of this, because you need to be a leader for yourself and get out of this.
And it's really hard sometimes, because then you have to think of personality.
Yeah.
Right? Some people will never come out of their house. And this is where leadership can be. So if somebody says, you know what, I know that leader, that senior who's next door is never coming out because their partner just died, their husband just died, their wife just died. Maybe as you, who's that person, can go and knock on their door, send them a note. Right. Because sometimes people, the other thing about leadership is to recognize sometimes people need to be invited to the table.
Well, and it might even be something as simple as, I've got some of the other neighbors coming over for a barbecue. Why don't you join us?
Or shoveling their snow and just leaving it, leaving a casserole or whatever it is, or just knocking on your door and saying this has happened. Because not everybody, they know they need the company, but they don't have the initiative to find out, right? So I wrote this book it really around, if you see a need in the community, be a friend. Develop a friendship. Develop a true curiosity without being nosy about your community, and take the initiative to find out what makes you nervous about yourself, if you can. And because if everybody is doing that, we're going to have a much healthier community.
And get past that you have to be the same age and the same everything to be friends with somebody, because you don't.
My dad's best friend was my niece. And I love to see them. My dad has passed away, but I love seeing them together, because sometimes children or seniors are the most ignored in our society. because they're in the polar opposite, but they get along because everybody kind of sees them unseen.
It's true. You do become invisible as you get older.
Yeah, because
It's
kids are
true.
supposed to be seen and not heard. And when you're
right.
senior, we don't want to hear your opinions because you're old and you don't have an opinion. Your opinion doesn't count. So when they're with, that's why grandparents and their grandchildren, it's bonding time. Because as a senior, you've lived it, you've done it all. I may not know technology, but I have an opinion. And they get to relive all that experience, right? So it's. I think if we can look at the world and see people who are sort of made invisible and see their value is a big thing about creating friendships.
I think sometimes too, it's not going and offering to do something. Sometimes you knock on somebody's door and say, I know this might be, but I really need a favor. I'm going to be away for a few days. Would you just kind of keep half an eye on my house? Would you take in my mail? Something that's quite doable.
Yes.
And sometimes that's better than offering something.
Yeah, and that's a great idea. I remember that my neighbors are no longer next door to me, but we developed community and neighborhood friendship. And I remember that exact situation. Because even me as an outgoing person, I was like, should I? Because you're wondering, am I imposing? And they were outside and chatting. And my niece and their children were playing. So that was an in for me. And I was going away and I said, could you just watch my cars? And it was short. And that was the beginning of something because they got to do. And I really feel people are helpers. I live in hope, right? I know there's a lot of incidents that our society is divisive, but I really feel that generally people want to help. And those that don't, and if you offer and they keep saying no, try somebody else. And it's okay if you ask and they say no, you've offered.
You've made the offer and you've opened the door and maybe they'll come back to you at some point.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, you're sitting around and you're wondering, like I'm spending way too much time alone. There are a lot of resources out there. And I strongly recommend people contact the Seniors Association.
Yes.
They are, even if it's just attending lectures, so you can go in and you can sit there by yourself and listen to the lecture. That's a first step, at least, to get you in the door, and then
go to your local library.
There's another one.
Right, because sometimes people are like, well, I don't want to go, but libraries are community, and a lot of times we forget that, right? You can go in and be with people, but be by yourself.
Right.
Right, so if you're really shy and you're like, but you can go to the library. You don't even have to check out a book because there's so many other things. You can get a movie. There's so many things that you can offer.
They offer a lecture series as well.
They have lecture series. They even have stuff for children. And I would say almost all of their stuff is free.
Pretty much, yeah.
I've never seen anything at the library that I had to pay for because it's their programming. And that's a great way to connect to people, right? And even if you're just talking to the librarian to get a book, you're going to be talking to somebody. And then you go back month after month. And in the library, when I go, there's so many things on the bulletin board that's happening in our community.
There is. And maybe something just triggers you, and you may still want to be a loner.
Yes.
But at least it gets you out of the house and seeing other people and getting on top of this, loneliness that is becoming a real issue.
Yeah, you got to be the leader of your own self, right?
Yeah.
And if anybody's listening right now feeling that way, I know it can be hard and you might feel really sad, but really just pick up the phone or go to the senior center or go to your library.
Go to your library.
Go to your library.
Something. Do something.
Do something.
Absolutely. Yes. Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming in today. This has been great.
Thank you for having me.
See you again.
Yes.